You're listening to the Hello World Podcast, number 61. My name is Sean Wildermuth, and I'm your host. The Hello World Podcast is where you can hear from some of your favorite developers, authors, and speakers about how they got started in this business and the decisions they made along the way. We go way back to their first computer, their first code experience, and their first job. We've decided not to have a sponsor for the podcast, but if you would like to support the podcast and the kinds of things that I do, feel free to visit my Pluralsight courses at seanw.me/psauthor, including my newest course on building a web app with ASP.NET Core. We're currently in the middle of a road trip covering 25 cities in North America and Europe. Currently, we're in Salt Lake City, which is stop number 11 of the tour. We've done live interviews of some of your favorite developers, including Scott Guthrie, Julie Yack, and Bill Wagner. See hwroadtrip.com for more information on cities and dates. Today's show was recorded live in San Diego with the amazing Tim Huckaby. Tim Huckaby is an industry luminary focused on emerging user experiences, user interaction design, and the natural user interface, or NUI. Mr. Huckaby has been awarded many times the highest rated keynotes and presentations for Microsoft and many other industry and technology conferences like CES and events worldwide. Mr. Huckaby is consistently rated in the top 10% of all speakers at these events. Having worked with or for Microsoft for over 25 years, Mr. Huckaby has been on stage with and done numerous keynote demos for many Microsoft executives, including Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. During our talk today, Tim told us of some old interesting stories about his time at Microsoft, working on IIS, and even a story about Scott Guthrie that we got to talk to Scott Guthrie about at a later event. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Welcome, San Diego. This is actually a really good crowd here. We've got a room full of developers who are really anxious to hear about how Tim Huckaby got started.
We've got developers with gray hair, too. A certain portion of them
I was
having fun with in the back.
We have developers with gray hair here on stage as well.
Well, that goes without saying, yeah.
So, you know, the podcast is mostly about how you got started. Did you have a computer at home when you were growing up?
No, I went to an all-boys Catholic school. We didn't have computers. We had Latin. All right.
And did Latin help you with your first programming language?
No.
Oh, darn.
Let's see. I went to the University of San Diego here in town.
Nice.
And at that time, that would be in 1980.
Oh, okay.
1980, and they gave me a programming class. I didn't sign up for a programming class, but you fill out this form, and they give you your first semester classes.
Oh, really?
And it was Pascal.
Of course.
Yeah.
In 1980.
It's funny how semicolons have come back. Now look at half the people with gray hair are going like this to Pascal, like, ooh, that's cool. There's a Fox programmer back here too, bringing me way back to my Fox days. Anyways, I fell in love with programming, and I took every class that the school had.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's it obviously it takes a certain personality to be a developer. It takes a certain persona. It's not for everybody, but I immediately figured out it was for me.
And so you had that passion from your first line of code almost.
I still love software, although I've got a lot of friends here in the audience, and they'll tell you. And I'll tell you, my own people don't allow me to write production code anymore. But I still maintain I can build a good demo. But production code, I'm the old guy in the office.
I think a couple of us know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you were taking this in college, and did you leave with a computer degree, or did you leave with some other
degree? The University
degree?
of San Diego, believe it or not, did not have a computer science degree. So my degree is in something business or something like that. I told you I took all the classes.
Sure.
Right? And so I ended up with 2 minors, one in computer science and one's in information systems.
Oh, okay.
This is back when we had information systems.
MIS
and,
was a title, right?
And MIS directors and things like that. Remember that? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. So I was also working for the school, slaying Fortran.
Oh, nice.
You know, building some of the school systems and working, kind of paying my way through college.
You know, NASA is looking for Fortran programmers right now.
Do you know COBOL programmers and Fortran programmers make twice what .NET programmers make?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just no fun.
I used to tell people that everyone should get into mumps. Do you know what mumps is?
Of course I know what mumps is.
Because the 5 guys that do it make $500,000 a year.
In fact, this is a mumps town. Welcome
Really?
to a mumps town. We've got all these huge healthcare orgs here.
Really?
That are still running mump systems.
Crazy. That came out, what, 67? Something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
So if you're thinking
your
about
young
changing
people
your career,
are completely confused right
that's
now,
okay.
right?
That's okay. When you start to explain punch cards and cassettes, they're not going to understand anymore.
We were just talking about punch cards just a minute ago.
So describe that first computer that you worked on in school. What was that? Do you know?
It was a Terac 77 microcomputer. And it had floppy disks, but not the ones you remember. These were the 14-inch ones.
14-inch? That's even
like the
older than
size
I
of
remember.
an album.
Wow.
Do you guys know what albums are, you people under 30?
Say vinyl.
Yeah,
They'll understand
right.
vinyl.
So, I ran into some of those discs in the garage the other day. And, they stored like 256K.
Okay, yeah.
On a 14, think about that. And then like one of my guys told me he's buying 128 terabyte USB sticks or something like that. Just think about that. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I built an illegal Apple II Plus during these times because they had a bunch of compilers. They had a Fortran compiler. They had a BASIC compiler. They had a beautiful Pascal compilers.
And the Apple II Plus didn't have lowercase. Is that? Do you remember that or not?
Did it have? Yeah, it had lowercase, didn't it?
I thought the C and the E did, but I didn't think the Plus did. Because I remember being on bulletin boards. I was a Commodore 64 guy, and Apple guys were always yelling because they didn't have lowercase.
Were we? We didn't think we were yelling.
You were yelling.
Well, yeah, this is before email, right? So we got software off BBSs.
Yep.
Not through email or any other, internet
Gopher.
type.
Yeah.
Right? We got them on BBSs. So and then I don't know. You're leading me into questions. I don't want.
No. This is where we wanted to go.
I really learned to program. I took a job at EDS when out of school when Ross Perot was still running the company.
Right.
And I was, for that first year, I was slaying JCL for the godlike COBOL programmers.
What is JCL?
The job control language.
Oh,
meaning
okay.
I was allocating memory and resources to the godlike programmers. That's all I did. Right, for a full year. But they had an IBM XT. Remember this?
I do. I owned one.
So my day job was, writing JCL and staring at COBOL. But at night, I'd get on this IBM XT with its 10 megabyte hard drive.
Which was enormous.
And that was what, $6,000 in like 1984? Remember this computer? Amazing computer. 10 megabyte hard drive. $6,000 computer.
More than you'd ever need. Unless you downloaded porn. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it had 640K, right? Which is Bill Gates said, why would anyone?
Very famously. Yeah.
So that's when I started programming in BASIC and things like that. That wasn't yours. That was my iPhone. Don't worry about
iPhone.
it. Yeah.
I'm sure it didn't break.
It has a case. I've already broken like 5 of them.
Well, I like Stephen Colbert explaining that iPhones and everything Apple makes is shaped like soap and hopes you'll drop it and it'll break.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty...
I'm going back to a Surface phone when it comes out. Andy, are we supposed to talk about that? Shit.
I think that's
You
NDA.
may have to scratch that. No one heard that I just said that, right?
No, it's public knowledge.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right.
At least I know about it. I'm no
Okay.
longer
End of year.
inside.
All right.
Yeah. So, so you were doing what? You were starting to write BASIC on the XT,
Yeah.
right?
But they also had compilers, right? So,
Right.
I was really comfortable in Pascal. So I was writing Pascal type stuff. Mostly I was hacking games, to tell you the truth.
Sure.
Yeah, I was hacking
that's what you would
games, seeing
do.
how they worked, and then putting my own little amusements in there for the godlike COBOL programmers that worked at the company. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember an early game called Telengard, which was on the Apple. It was a sort of a dungeon crawler, and the first thing I did, because it was in BASIC, was go in and raise my stats to all 18s, right? Because it was based on the D&D rules.
Because you could do that, and it was easy.
Yeah, and it was easy. It was like just you could search for those numbers in the hex editor, and you'd
Right.
find it pretty
Yeah,
easily.
yeah.
And then it was no more fun because you were now overpowered in this awful game that could not be more exciting in the moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, good times.
I guess good times. So you transitioned from writing the job control language stuff. Were you starting to do other work while working for EDS at the time?
Well, for those of you gray hair who remember back to these times, General Motors acquired EDS.
Oh, I
and
didn't know
even though I had a promise that I could come back to San Diego after my year stint, they said, Tim, you're moving to Detroit.
Oh.
And I said, no, I'm not. So I had to, spoiled Southern Californian, right? I've been in San Diego a long time.
Well, I think most people can make that, Detroit, San Diego. That's a...
So I moved back and I took a Pascal programming job. Let's see. Yeah, on the input-output side, we were doing Pascal, but we were calling Foxbase, right? We had an API to the
Nice.
jet engine, and that was at a manufacturing company here in town. That was a really fun job. That was a really fun job.
And so you were data processing mostly? Was that what you mean by input-output side?
No, I mean, like the UI, what we would call the
Right.
user experience now,
Yes.
was in Turbo Pascal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right, but the database was back in Fox.
Oh, I see.
Kind of a bizarre combo, but that's what they did, and that's what
That
we
is
did.
what they did.
Yeah. And then, am I supposed to? Is the idea
Yeah.
here I go through my career?
Well,
Or can we skip some parts?
Absolutely. You're not here to give your resume. I'm curious, as you went to these first few jobs, I think the challenge for developers, and the part that's most interesting to me, is sort of that transition from the guy, you were sort of a lone programmer in college, and maybe in your first job, you were just a guy in a cubicle that was feeding these other guys. When did you start to work with like other developers and know what those challenges were? Because those are sort of non-technical challenges that a lot of developers have to figure out.
If we could skip forward from the mid 80s to the mid 90s, really where I learned how software built was at Microsoft.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I worked on some server teams. I commuted from San Diego every Friday night and Sunday night,
Wow.
and worked there.
I never knew you worked at Microsoft.
Yeah, I worked
how
on some server teams.
Wow.
This is back when Bill Gates said, we're behind on the internet. We need to switch the whole company on a dime. Well, I worked on IAS4 and some
you're
other
deploying.
server
Yeah.
products, like Microsoft's first real internet server.
Nice.
And that's why I really learned how software was built, and really my team was 2,500 people.
Wow. How do you even navigate
my personal
that kind of team?
I was a dev lead on an architecture team. My personal team was only like 4 or 5 people, but the
Right.
entire team was 2,500 people.
How do you navigate a team like that? I mean, I've never
Not
worked
well.
more than maybe 250 developers.
Not well. Complete chaos.
I bet.
And every time Age of Empires would release a new build, right, all the Microsoft people would just, close their doors and boom, they'd be gone for like 6 hours while less people had to still work. Yeah. So yeah, that's when
That's
when
why
honestly,
they discontinued Age of Empires? Is that true? Just to increase developer productivity?
Yeah, it used to drive me crazy because they'd do a build like the AOE team would do a build like every Friday, and I swear we just went ooh. It didn't matter. We had 2,500 bugs. It didn't matter. They just ooh. Productivity went to kaput. But honestly, when I was very intimidated when I went to Microsoft, and because at the time it was like godlike people.
Yeah.
That was they're still godlike people, but I I felt like I'm not worthy.
Did you have to talk yourself into taking the job?
Well, I went to my lovely bride now of 27 years and say, hey, listen, this is an opportunity. Our kids were small.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity. It's only going to be 3 months, right? Famous last story, right? And
hope my wife's not hearing this story because this may come up.
I'm hoping this will launch my career and all that stuff when you're young and idealistic. And I'll never forget. I flew to Seattle, took a cab to Redmond, Washington, walked in a room about this size with about this many people, and it was all the leads for this product team.
Wow.
And they're all screaming at each other and cussing. And, I mean, seriously, like you have the beep, beep, beep thing right there.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Fuck you. So I walk in and all the eyes just turn to me, right? Because I'm late for this meeting that I'm supposed to be at. And the head guy, Anthony Bay, goes, hey, this is Tim. He's from San Diego. He's taken over for Jimmy, who had a nervous breakdown. Seriously, I'm not bullshitting.
I believe
His name wasn't Jimmy. I won't say his name out loud. But
what does it rhyme with? Oh yeah.
And that's how I started.
Wow, that's intimidating.
Yeah, but I quickly learned that these are people just like us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some brilliance there, but I learned so much. And my boss, oh my God, my boss was amazing. The only thing I miss about the internology thing, honestly, is not having a boss.
Yeah.
I'm one of those entrepreneur guys who would love to work for someone else.
Yeah. In this idea of working for somebody else, is it something you would love to work for somebody else, period, or you would love to work for somebody else if it mattered, if it was on something that mattered?
Either or.
Yeah. So that's not really
I've gathered lots of mentors in my life.
Yeah.
But my particular boss, I should say his name out loud because he's awesome. He's still at Microsoft. He's been there like 30 years. His name is Bill Griffin. Right? You'll never see him in front of an audience.
Right.
He's one of those pure engineers. Right? He'd rather die than step in front of an audience. From that IIS stuff we were doing and Windows NT, if you remember back these days. It's, by the way, 65 million lines of code. That's Windows NT. That's not commonly known. Can you imagine?
No.
65 million lines of code.
And only 4 comments, I heard.
Yeah, like admin password embedded here in clear text. Yeah. So anyways, Bill Griffin went on, and he was the original architect of SharePoint. Ron Rolfs. My buddy Ron's over here. He's a SharePoint programmer.
Awesome.
Yeah. And, well, anyways, I'd love to work with a guy like Bill again.
Absolutely.
Not that my own people aren't brilliant. It's just,
well, of course,
yeah.
But it's now, do you find it hard finding mentors, even though you're sort of leading this group, but do you now have to find your mentors as people that work for you or outside the organization? Or because being a mentor and being mentored to me is so crucial. And I work on a couch in Atlanta, right? I don't have a group of people that are.
Do you really work on a couch in Atlanta?
I really do. Can
we get a picture of that?
Absolutely. A lot of people think that I have this like big studio in the house, and I literally have a mic hanging in front of my couch for when I record courses and stuff. It is not a pretty sight.
Awesome. Reminds me of the South Park episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I crossed the dark side, so to speak, a while back. What's the dark side? That's when you come to a point in your career where you have to give up production code. Mm-hmm. Right? When I started that internology company, that's basically what I had to do. And God, I miss it. And God, I'm so jealous of the engineers that work at the company and you people who are slaying production code. So most of my mentors these days are business people.
Sure.
CEO types. Yeah.
And so when you started the company, what was the driver there? What made you go, oh, it's time for me to...
It wasn't a driver. It was me and a really good friend of mine who I just spent like an hour with, Dave Lynn of Microsoft, who works in this local office here.
Nice.
And we were at a Microsoft partner here in town, a very large Microsoft partner. He was in charge of sales, And I was in engineering, obviously, and we used to bitch and complain that we could do it better and more ethically. You know, I was like 25 years old. I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. We could do it more honestly and better. And we walked backwards into an angel investment.
Nice.
Which is a story in itself, and that's when we started the Internology company in 1999. And suddenly we had this money. It doesn't take a lot of money to start a service company.
Right.
Right? It takes employees and a customer.
Right.
Right? And I had the customer in my back pocket. That was the whale company, Pacific Life, which is in Newport Beach. And then I had worked with a lot of developers in San Diego, and even though it was the boom of the internet, when everyone told me, you know, how could you leave your job? You have this awesome job and you're never going to be able to hire anybody. But they all came. Yeah. You know, we still have Internology employees that have been there, 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a skill in itself.
Yeah. Well, we have one engineer, God bless him, that he's so senior that he doesn't have to talk to customers, right? he literally can go into a room and close the door, and which is the exact opposite of the way we build software. But he's been around so long that, you know, Scrum and Agile is beyond him. Right. Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. So in starting this new company, what were sort of the challenges you had? The
challenges were we had a bunch of programmers running a company. Right.
And that's not necessarily
it's a recipe for disaster. A bunch of engineers running a company. We went from I don't take this wrong, but we went from 0 to 4 million in revenue. No, 0 to 3.2 million in revenue in our first year.
Wow.
We grew from 0 employees to 32 employees in our first year.
That's
that size is actually
growth.
Bigger than we are now. But it was complete chaos.
Sure.
You know, Dave, God bless his soul, who I mentioned earlier, Dave Lind from Microsoft, was trying to keep the mothership alive. And I was like, 80, 90 hours a week billable.
Absolutely.
So I wasn't really in the company. I was just a billable researcher. Right. And then we lost the customer and we went, yeah, good times.
That's a scary.
Yeah.
There's that. I talked to some people who started their own companies, especially around consulting. And there's kind of two kinds you find. One with a bunch of small customers, and then, like you had, one with the whale, right? That they'll do anything because they know that without them they're gonna sit down. How do you manage the whale? Well, maybe that's a bad question.
It's the other way around. When we lost the whale, and now we're getting to stuff we really shouldn't talk about, but if you remember back to this time, that's when the WorldCom thing went down.
Oh, yeah.
And the whale company lost 80% of their company overnight. And the CEO did what he had to do. He said, no more contractors.
Right.
I'm going to lay off half the company, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And we had a contract with them, but you don't sue your customer,
no.
especially when they're
hurting so much, yeah.
Right?
When they don't have any cash.
So we had some Microsoft work, and there was some tears shed. We went 6 months with barely any work, but then we built it back up. Mm-hmm. And and 5 years later there was another crisis, and and we built it back up. Nowadays, our struggle is most of our work is referral.
Right.
I mean, it's really high profile stuff. I mean, I really shouldn't complain. But it would be nice to get a net new customer every once in a while.
Yeah, I could see that.
So in case you didn't know, last night was a big night for us, for Internology. If you're into politics, we built all the broadcast software for CNN. So when Wolf Blitzer and John King were touching, big touchscreens last night, that's us. Yeah, and we get to brag about that now. Which is cool. That's a great customer.
And that's a great, incredibly visible. And I mean, all the stuff I've ever seen you put out has always been this incredibly slick stuff that I see at the keynotes at every conference I go to, and a lot of the stuff around NUI, which I know you guys are.
I'm totally enamored with what we now call emerging experiences, which would be, I don't know, or more personal computing, right? All these acronyms that we get out of Microsoft. It's about touching it, waving at it, speaking to it, but now it's about holographic experiences. And one might speculate that we are in the midst of the most exciting project in internology history. And that is saying a lot.
That is.
Because we've done some seriously cool work. And it's that freaking HoloLens thing. It's just changed my world. I'm enamored with the thing.
And so you have them to give out to the people tonight?
And
is that
tonight
right?
we're going to give everybody a HoloLens.
Everybody look under your chair.
Yeah.
Not true at all.
That's not
true.
going to happen. Yeah, and not because of cost. It's because they're a unicorn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, I think they went public yesterday. Okay. Yesterday they went public that they're finally going to send developer editions of the HoloLens in waves starting March 30th, right about when build comes around.
Yeah, and they announced you could pre-order as well.
Yes.
I think either now or starting the 31st.
You signed up last year to have the privilege to be, vetted out, to be worthy to get a HoloLens device for $3,000, by the way. Or something like that.
Do you remember? I remember laughing at Google when they had the same thing with the lens of like
Google glasses.
Who's gonna spend I don't know what it was $2,500 for a dev device? But now that it's HoloLens, I'm like, that doesn't sound like that much money.
Oh yeah. Plus, there's the Microsoft's got a huge jump in this augmented reality space with this particular device.
Yeah, it's very sexy.
I mean, someone will catch up. But by then there'll be HoloLens 2 and things like that.
So obviously you've touched this stuff. Do you see this as edging towards the consumer or edging towards the enterprise? I mean, I'm sure there's spaces in both.
What a good question. I'm not used to such good questions from you.
Oh, especially my wife told me what to ask.
For my struggle, and I don't mind it being recorded, is I'm disappointed the HoloLens team is so infatuated with games.
Right.
To tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I think, in healthcare, there's so many use cases that would be so much more valuable. And certainly in enterprise software, and we don't build games, and that's part of it.
Right.
Basically the app we're going to build without breaking NDA is you're going to walk into a molecule in like the holodeck on Star Trek, and you're going to construct a molecule. Obviously, for scientists,
right?
That like a scientist will come into this Fortune 50 company and say, "I have a cure for this type of cancer, but I need to build this molecule," and they do it in this holographic experience, and they're grabbing amino acids and atoms and stuff like this, and we have all these business rules about what you can and can't do at a molecular level.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, this company then you say go, and it outputs the molecule physically, like a 3D printer for molecules.
Wow.
Right? And it comes out, this is so crazy, it's so above my head, but it comes out in like a gas form, a powder, or a liquid. And you give this giant Fortune 50 $1 million and you walk away with a jar of a molecule. Seriously.
That's crazy. I was on a plane about 5 years ago. Actually, I'm on a plane all the time, but that's not the important part of the story.
Both.
Yeah. And I was talking to a guy out of University of Portland or University of Oregon. I don't remember which. But he was talking about this very thing. It wasn't that he knew how they were going to construct them, but they had found how to handle a bunch of leukemias by physically designing molecules that fit into the receptors, right? It was no longer about what the chemical was, but they could get, if it fit into the hole that the
in the DNA strand. My understanding is they typically build a crystal, and the crystal gloms on somewhere in the DNA strand, affecting poisoning, effectively curing cancer.
Yeah.
That's like the latest way to treat some of these things.
And that's crazy because you and I probably both used to make data entry to help sales guys, right?
On green screens.
Yes, on green screens. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny how the user experience is so important now.
Yeah.
'Cause on a green screen, there is no user experience, right? It's crud.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Nowadays, we have to worry about these large form factor screens. Like, so when we put a control on, if John King on CNN, if he's on one side of the screen and he touches control, but it happens over here, he gets pissed off.
Right.
Right? So we have to think through all this stuff a lot more elaborately.
I bet.
Yeah.
And he, from what I would guess, is he's difficult to work with.
Exact opposite.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
Nicest guy in the world.
I had to ask the question since we're recording it.
My people like talk to him just like he's an average Joe.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And so are you doing the holographic stuff they're doing in CNN as well, or are we talking about the big board stuff?
Oh, we would love to do a holographic experience for CNN, but the Microsoft HoloLens team is very restrictive about you know, who's going to get there.
And show it off,
Yeah.
except for sending it into space.
Yeah, except for really high-vis PR type stuff.
Yeah.
That was cool, by the way.
Well,
you got to admit that was cool.
I thought that was cool, but I remember the first one that blew up on the pad. I was like, I think there's only 14 of those HoloLens. We just lost 2 because the spaceship blew up.
And it was a prototype, too. So it wasn't even a device, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge. I want one of these devices so much, but I'd have no idea the kind of things I do, because I'm so web focused these days. What the story for me is.
I disagree with you. I think that device is so revolutionary that you would immediately come up with use cases.
That would be awesome.
Right, you wear this thing. I'm not bullshit. I'm not bullshitting
Don't
with
worry
you.
about it.
When I say the first time I put on the HoloLens, this ultra secret project at Microsoft that still has not been publicly available, and I was literally brought to tears. I'm not bullshitting you. It was so freaking amazing.
Wow.
I can't tell you what it was because I think they're gonna do a big keynote thing at Build.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I don't want to take away the
okay.
thunder, but I mean, just an amazing experience because it's not virtual reality. You see the world around you.
Right.
It's just suddenly there's these 3D objects in your space that you can manipulate.
And that's very sexy.
And it's freaking .NET, right? It may not be server side, but it is .NET.
And
it's also C++ and Unity and all that type of stuff.
And all that stuff, yeah. What I'm fascinated about with the HoloLens is the no wires, that it is this self-contained thing, that isn't this, because I have an Oculus SK1 or whatever it is called.
Yeah, we've got those too. Yeah.
And
the roller coaster thing.
Well, yes, but my real problem is I feel like I'm having an EKG taken, right? Because there's like 14 wires out of my head, and if I move too far, things start sliding on the desk.
Yeah, so in terms of industrial engineering and ergonomic design, it's that Microsoft made sure that it's comfortable to wear. It's like wearing a piece of sunglasses, to tell you the truth.
Oh, that light?
Which is amazing that the battery it has, right? It goes for a while, probably more than your iPhone. Or your Windows phone.
Android phone, but yeah.
Android phone, yeah. Yeah, it goes for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's all about CPU and battery in that thing.
Yeah.
Right? Once we get that figured out, CPU and battery, really these things will go forever. Isn't it atrocious? I'd grab my phone, but it fell down. That we have to charge our phone every night. That is the dumbest thing in the world.
It is.
Remember the original BlackBerries? Now we're doing the gray hair thing again. remember the original BlackBerry devices, the emailer things?
Yeah.
They would go a month.
A month.
And then we get smartphones. I don't get it.
No,
so
it's
whoever invents the battery is going to win.
Yeah, they're going to be the...
or the low-powered CPU. Either way.
Yeah, maybe. Or a way to charge the battery without having to plug in, right?
Like off your own body. That's actually a great idea.
Actually,
Take
I'm
the
thinking...
electricity of your body and recharge your HoloLens.
Actually, my idea is the pedometer, right? We're already counting our steps. Why are we losing all that kinetic energy not to recharge the battery?
Agreed.
Yeah. I don't get it. It seems... They do it for watches, right? There's tons of watches out there that charge themselves by human movement already.
I think as long as Moore's Law continues to execute, we're going to have this problem.
Don't you think Moore's Law is over?
No.
No?
Which is every 2 years, twice as many transistors on the board, right? That was Moore's Law. It was this uncanny prediction that went for like 40 or 50 years.
It really did.
I think it's still in execution.
Really? Okay.
And as long as we keep stuffing more CPU power on the board and the battery doesn't keep up, I think we're going to have the same problem.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I think you're right.
So we digress.
Well, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you being on the show. Yeah. Well, okay, I'm overstating it, but
I think you're grossly exaggerating this experience.
I was going to mention that in the intro when I recorded it later.
Okay.
But thank you for admitting it ahead of time. Yeah. But thanks so much for being on the show. I know that you're working on like 3 hours sleep, so I don't want to keep you up too late because I know you old guys. That
hurts
need your
me.
Sleep.
That hurts me. No, my pleasure.
Absolutely.
And welcome to San Diego.
Thank you.
Hopefully this undoubtedly will be your best show. Short of Scott Guthrie.
Yeah, I'm quite
I've been
excited about
upstaged
that
by
one.
that guy so many times. Can I end this with a quick Scott Guthrie story?
Please.
I assume you all know who Scott Guthrie is. You know, he's like the number 2 guy at Microsoft now. And I was telling these guys in the back a story of a couple weeks ago when Scott Guthrie himself was pouring through our code, stepping through our code at 3 a.m.
That does sound like him.
Yeah, he still writes code. But the cool thing about Scott Guthrie that not many people know, and I want you to ask him this question.
I will.
Okay. Ask Scott, how was ASP.NET created? Does anyone know this story?
I do not.
So when I started at Microsoft, Scott started basically like a month after me.
Oh, really?
And there's this amazing PM. His name was Mark Anders. I don't believe he's longer with Microsoft. Anyways, Mark Anders had this idea. And it's basically like, hey, what if we build an ISAPI filter and we trap packets, right? And we insert code into that, and that way we could have dynamic web pages.
Right.
Right? The forefather of ASP.NET.
Yeah.
So Scott Guthrie says, yeah, give me the weekend. Seriously. This is what happened. He created ASP.NET over a weekend.
Wow.
Comes back on Monday and says, here it is. And Mark Anders was like, holy shit, we got to show Bill Gates. And they did. They went straight to Bill Gates. And that's basically what started .NET.
Wow.
So, and you know when you ask Scott Guthrie, you know what he's going to say? Oh, I don't know. He's just that humble.
Yeah.
You know, Scott, how was ASP.NET created? Oh, I don't know. Seriously, he's that humble.
Uh-oh, I'm going to have to press him.
Yeah, press him.
I will. I promise.
All right.
That is a weekend.
That's Scott Guthrie.
Wow.
And it's a senior exec that's still writing code.
That's crazy.
You gotta love that.
You do.
Yeah.
You do, which is why I think Azure's doing so well. He writes all of Azure, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but he's got about 800 brilliant engineers revving it like every 2 days. Have you noticed you have to press refresh on the Azure portal like every other day?
Yeah.
Amazing.
'Cause it's
They're
just
stacking
turning
themselves
around.
now.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks again.
Sure, buddy. Great to see you.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Hello World Podcast. Remember, you can subscribe to the Hello World Podcast at